Some of the reason that people come to your business is because of your curation, but at some point you have to let that go and go with the trends. How do you make sure that they listen to what is happening in the market rather than just what they think?
Well, it's part listening to what's in the market, but really it's knowing who your customer is. And again, like you go to shows and it's like the same trend is repeated over and over. And I don't know if it hit as much in Australia as it did here in the US, but leopard and animal prints were like huge to the point where every single, from high end to low end, every single person. And it was almost like, well, I don't have a lot of choice. So I went in, I'm like, okay, I'm all in on the animal thing. Well, guess what? The customers in that area are not fans of animals.
Hey there, and welcome to the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. If you're looking to get more sales, more customers, master your marketing, and ultimately take control of your retail or e-commerce business, then you're in the right place. I'm Selena Knight, a retail growth strategist and multi-award-winning store owner whose superpower is uncovering exactly what your business requires to move to the next level. I'll provide you with the strategies, the tools, and the insight you need to scale your store. All you need to do is take action. Ready to get started? Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of the Bringing Business to Retail podcast. Well, it's school holidays here, Easter school holidays here in Australia. And if you've been following me for a while, you probably know that I talk about the Airbnb that we have. We call it the beach house. It's down the south coast of New South Wales, and it is another income stream for us. We've diversified our income streams, and that it's a business for us. And what we have noticed is as people start to tighten their belts with a lot of economic uncertainty, the number of bookings that we've got is not at the same level as we used to have. And of course, this becomes an issue. Whilst the price of the bookings have gone up, that's only gone up because all of the expenses that are incurred in running a business have gone up. So the actual profit margin, still the same, which means if you have less bookings or less sales, then obviously you're making less money. And just like any other business, you have to have a reason for people to come and shop with you, or in our case, come and stay with you. And so we've been looking at fun ways that we can make our house stand out a little bit. And when we bought the house 6 years ago, we bought it as a bank foreclosure, and we renovated the entire thing because, some of the floor was falling out. So the whole top floor got renovated, and downstairs is a garage, a laundry, and an extra bathroom. As much as we wanted to turn the garage originally into a bunk room, we weren't able to do that without a lot of expense just due to building code. So we kind of just painted the brick walls, put some flooring down, put a ping pong table in, and we call it a games room. And it's functioned quite well up until now. However, we're looking at ways that we can bring people into the house that make us stand out. So we decided to go all out in the games room and put up beautiful walling. We put the VJ board and some acoustic panels to stop the noise transferring to our neighbours. We have new flooring going down. We didn't get that done this time round. And lots of paint, lots and lots of paint. The thing was, we thought it would take 2 days. We had a contractor come in and help us batten out the walls, and then we kind of did the rest of it ourselves. In between all of this, my husband and I were still working. And so, as you can imagine, the amount of time is kind of limited. But a week later, we managed to get all the walls done. We got the skirting and the architraves in. We got it all painted. Pretty much all that's left to do now is the flooring, the new flooring. The current flooring is still there. And I want to put some wallpaper on one wall. So that still have to be done. But also the laundry is now going to be turned into a sauna. Oh yeah, I am looking forward to this. I have always wanted a sauna, and we have just got one for our own home, and we're going to get one for the Airbnb. And then the old bathroom is being turned into a laundry bathroom combo because it has a shower in there, and we don't need 3 showers in a 3-bedroom house. So the shower is going to be pulled out and turned into the washer dryer area. And then we have a toilet and a basin close that room off, and then we have the sauna. So trying to find ways that are cost effective, because at the end of the day, we have a budget. Like there's no unlimited pool of money for this to happen. And we have to look at, we probably won't get any extra money. If we do, it might be like $10 a night. This is not a case of spending money to make more money. It's spending money to get the bookings. So yes, it is making more money because we will get the bookings, but it's not like we're increasing the profit margin. It's more about increasing revenue. And just like any other business, you have to look at return on investment. So how long is it going to take for us to pay that back? And that's one of the things that we always look at. Anyway, that is a very long intro for the fact that last week I was only kind of working. But that's what I love about my business, is that I have this ability. I have an amazing team who can take the business and keep it running if I have other stuff to do. And pretty much all I did last week is show up to the calls that I needed to show up to, which is just a lovely place to be in business. And it just makes me so happy that after all these years, I have a fabulous team. We are growing. So we've just put on a new coach for our Supercharge and 5X programs, Coach Kerry, who is an e-commerce specialist. So if you're in those programs, you'll be getting to meet her soon. She's just going through her training. Now, what does all that have to do with today's episode? Well, not an awful lot, I'll be honest. But today's episode was so fun. You know, sometimes you just meet somebody and you just click. Well, Michelle Sherrier and we had this fun little episode where we didn't quite meet the first time around, but now we have a really fun story about how we met. And I've been on her podcast. She's been on my podcast. We really struggled to stop talking. And in fact, after the podcast, I sent her a little voice message and like, hey, I really like talking to you. I think we should do this on a regular basis. And I'll be honest, I never do that. And so I reached out to her and said, let's do this on a regular basis. Let's just meet like even just once a month and just chat, because we love chatting about work. We love chatting about business. We love chatting about life. And she said, yes. So, hey, I made a new friend. That is always very, very exciting. Michelle is so smart. I mean, she's also absolutely gorgeous, can I just say, but so smart and so talented. And if you have a retail business, especially if you have a bricks and mortar store, you are going to love today's episode. But even if you don't, even if you're a pure play e-commerce, I think you're going to get a lot of tips out of today's episode. Now, I toyed with the idea of breaking this podcast up because we do talk for a whole hour. And in fact, I have to kind of stop the conversation because I know podcasts that are longer than that, you guys really struggle to listen to. But I would love your feedback, because I have another long one coming up. Do you prefer me to kind of chop them up halfway and give them to you into kind of 25, 30-minute chunks? Or do you just like to continue to listen to the story? And if you don't have a whole hour, you come back and listen to it later. I would love you if you could send me a DM or comment on one of my posts on social media and let me know, because at the end of the day, we're trying to provide amazing content for you, but in a way that you can actually consume it. So let me know, do you prefer to chop it up and listen to it in chunks? Or do you want to listen to the whole big episode? Okay, enough from me. Let's jump into today's episode with the fabulous Michelle Sherrier. All right, Michelle, I'm not going to say enamored, but I am so impressed with your design experience. Let's go with that, like your credentials, your street cred. And I have to admit, guys, I reached out to Michelle. I went on a bit of a binge, like, I haven't been on some podcasts for a while, so I'm just going to reach out to a bunch of cool people and see if they want a guest. And yours was the first one because the title of your podcast is the Retail Whore Podcast. And then I looked at like some of your profiles and I was like, this is a lady that I would drink shots with. Like, this is the kind of person I have to hang out with, and I would like to know you, even if you don't want to know me. And so I think I sent you like 3 messages. Hi.
And then I stood you up. How rude.
It not on purpose. And not on purpose. And you did the most professional thing in the world. And so Michelle did stand me up. It was only for like, we do a pre-chat just to see if we gel. And Michelle stood me up for that. But she was were you at fashion? At Magic?
I was living in Las Vegas, setting up showrooms for the Las Vegas gift show.
Yeah.
I had 3 spaces and I was like living there and I was out of my head.
I can imagine. But she did the most beautiful thing. She sent me a voice message going, I am so, so sorry. I've never done this before. And I was like, you know what? Again, that is a person that I would like to hang out with. That takes some responsibility, goes to the effort of sending me a message. Like, you're my kind of people. Welcome to the show, Michelle Sherrier. And no one knows. I haven't even mentioned who you are. So welcome to the show. Please tell us all about yourself.
Thank you. Well, the podcast is called Retail Whore because I have literally been in retail for 45 years. I started when I was 14. My mom said she was a single mom and she said, you're not sitting on your ass anymore on the beach. So you have to get a job. And she promptly drove me to the local mall here in Manhattan Beach, California. And I started at the Wet Seal. And it's like, I've had this love affair with retail my entire life. And I've done just about every single job there is to do, which is why it's called the Retail Whore. And I've kind of moved my way through. I did quit for a bit to go live in Japan as a model. When I was 16 or 17, I quit high school and my dad signed off for me to go live in Japan. Who does that, by the way?
My daughter would do that. My daughter is obsessed with everything Japanese. It is the only class at school that she does well in. She is in year 9 and she's already doing university level Japanese.
Wow, that's impressive.
And it's the only thing she engages with. So,
wow, I had an interpreter. I didn't even bother trying. It was just go and work and here's your interpreter. And I came back and I put an application in to go work at the Fred Segal sale in Santa Monica. It's once a year. At that time, it was once a year. And I got hired as temp. And I was the denim girl and they made me stand on like basically a stage with denim around me in like Daisy Duke shorts and like hawking denim. And I guess I worked well because I was hired on to stay. And then I ended up being a manager and then I was a buyer. And then Fred, the beautiful thing about being in the Fred Segal world is there's nothing that's ever going to be like this ever again, is that all the stores he's passed on now and the name has been sold. So the name you see at Fred Segal airports and SLS hotels is the name has been bought by a luxury brand. Prior to that, within this bubble of Fred Segal, if you worked your ass off and you proved that you really loved and you really were there and you really worked hard, Fred would pull you aside and say, hey, we have a chance to open a store. I'm going to back you, but I really think you can do it. And this is your sink or swim moment. And so I guess I swam because I had 3 stores as we just talked.
Did you own the stores?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's a few companies that do that. Yeah.
All the stores in Fred Segal's back in the day in Santa Monica and Melrose, everybody was individually owned and operated. You were under the umbrella of Fred Segal. And I think that's the reason why when we talked about the store that I was talking to in Joshua Tree, what I liked about it is that it was very much a collaboration or like a co-op situation. You owned your own inventory, you had your own employees, but it was your store and you had it. Like my store was Fred Segal Comfort, Fred Segal Comfort 2 and Fred Segal Environment. And I, was lucky enough to be there for, I don't know how long it was. And I lost my stores during the earthquake that was here in California that leveled so much. My accountant's, my attorney pulled me aside and said, all right, we're pulling the plug on you. You're like, no more. And so
but you just glossed over this, but you just told me beforehand, this was not a gloss over moment. This was actually a life-changing moment because you said all your inventory had arrived, they'd been paid for, but you couldn't sell it. You turn up after the devastation of an earthquake.
It was a very pivotal moment. I mean, I have a saying that I use a lot is that everything happens for a reason and change is good. And if it didn't happen, the earthquake, I probably would have been at Fred's till the bitter end. I was overextended and everything that we were buying, I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but there's net 30 terms and it's delivered in 30 days. You have to pay for it, broken or not. And a lot was broken and it was just, I was overextended. So it was just kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And,
so what did you do? I can't imagine How did you get the news? You said your accountant and your attorney said, that's it. You have to shut up shop. Like,
Yeah.
what goes through your head at that moment?
Well, okay. So if like the backstory, I was an asshole. Like I was 27 and I had 3 stores at Fred
Oh,
Siegel where
wow. So young.
you go into showrooms and people kiss your ass. And it's like, oh, we want to be in Fred Siegel, sit down. What can we get you? I became this ass that was just wheeling. Okay, I want net 90. I want what doesn't sell that goes back. I want you to fixture like Quicksilver, huge US surf company. They totally
Quicksilver is Australian.
Oh, okay.
Do you know what? Fun fact, just to cut in, I actually have a shop in the building, which was the original offices of Quicksilver.
I love that brand. I mean, surf culture is like where my heart is at. My husband's is an ex-pro surfer, but you know, I was going to these big brands, Stussy, like Spot Sport, 26 Red. I mean, they're not around anymore, but saying, I want at 90, I want what doesn't sell goes back, and I want you to redo the store. So Quicksilver redid a whole big portion of my store for free. And, you know, when you talk and you treat people like that and you think you're all that in a Big Mac, when you go down, people are very happy to see you go down because you were an asshole. And I can say that, but I will say this, that it was the best lesson, honestly, that I could have ever asked for at that age, to have that much lose it all and have to tuck your tail between your leg and send out email, or it wasn't emails, send out letters and call people. And then, you know, fast forward to show up at shows again, where you burned a lot of people through bankruptcy. I had to go through bankruptcy. There was no paying it back. And then having to show up in the wholesale space again and act like, hi, I'm back. I want to write your line and I'm not an asshole anymore. And I'm really sorry. And I mean, it was a great lesson. And in humility, honestly, like humility is a gift. And I'm really glad I went through that, because I will never talk to people like that again. And I will always be extremely grateful for the vendors that do things for my retailers now as a consultant. But yeah, that's the bankruptcy story.
How did you not at that point, like you said, you had that, it's kind of a come to Jesus moment, right? Like, I've lost everything. I was a complete ass. How do I, like, a lot of people would have just said, I'm off to find a new industry now. What made you go back?
Well, I love retail. I love everything about retail. And I had, within my stores, I was the buyer and I was the merchandiser, and I had a chance to kind of stretch my muscle. And I didn't know merchandising like the level that when I closed my stores, I went in and ended up getting recruited by Anthropologie, and that level of visual. And because I love retail so much, like I knew, and that's all I know. I mean, honestly, like when you quit high school and you were a model and you've been submerged in retail for this long, it's not like I can just go, you know what, I think I'm going to go be an ophthalmologist. Or, I mean, you just don't, it is, you are who you are, and it's embedded in me, and it will always forever be embedded in me. And you do what you know. I mean, honestly, like you go, so I was lucky enough to go to be recruited by Anthropologie, and that's where for visual, the learning the business side and the aesthetic and how they work together, and how reporting and how following your reports also helps you follow, like, why sales might have dropped off or is even on the floor. Like, all of that education was so phenomenal. And that's one thing and their aesthetic. I mean, come on, let's be real. Their aesthetic is just like unreal.
I was just saying to you before we got on, when I had my stores, and I'll be honest, you have all these skills I don't. I am so bad at visual merchandising that I know all of the theory. Like, I could recite it back to you, but my team would say, do not put anything on the shelf. Like, it's just going to make twice as much. We have to then take it off and put it back on again, because it's not my thing. And so I used to always say, when my store grows up, I want it to be Anthropologie. I remember discovering Anthropologie, like, I don't know, when I first opened my stores, and just thinking, there's a whole other world out there that isn't this corporate, table upon table with plastic risers. And I know how much you
Oh,
love plastic risers. And like we can be in this kind of dreamlike state where people love to come. And look, I'm not going to say we ever replicated that, but as a destination store, my team were always like, I used to read everything. I used to follow anthropology people on their blogs back in the day, and they would talk about how they'd been given a brief, and everyone gets given, and please correct me if I'm wrong, everyone gets given a brief, but you get to interpret it your own way, but you get a budget to do that.
Yeah.
And she would say, and this is what we did. And then she would have pictures of what other people did and their interpretations. And I used to soak that up, and I'd be like to my team, okay, so this is how they did it. And I'm like, read this blog post. And I'm giving you the same thing. I'm giving you a brief and a budget, and you just tell me what you need. And I had great people who would come up with the most amazing displays for like $300. But then they would call suppliers and say, hey, do you have any like broken stock or whatever we can use for our shop windows? And we got so good at it. We used to charge people, like charge vendors to be in our windows.
Wow. Yeah. The big, they were the visual packets that we would get. It was like, quarterly, and it was everything from what, your non-negotiables, the display that you had to have, what departments were going to be in it, what velocity items. And then it was, we always called it dumpster diving, because it was like, okay, what can we find in alleys and, trash and, flea markets? It was a magical place to work.
And so was that defining moment where you, or did you already know this, where you realized that the visual merchandising and design plays such a big part in how much things sell?
Yeah. And I still, because I was at Anther for 7 years, and I realized I'm just not meant to be in corporate at all. Like I just don't deliver the message well. Like I'm pretty cut and dry. It's like, what happened? We left Friday. It was a brand new setup, and it's totally unstocked now. Like it's like wrecked. Like, did no one maintain it? Like what happened? And in corporate, you need to deliver that message a different way. And I was like, okay, I'm done. So
this is not my thing here.
Yeah. So I left and I started my own brand, MC Design Collaboration. That's what I do now for my clients. And that storytelling is one thing I'm on my soapbox on a lot about, because Anther does storytelling very well. And with retailers, the storytelling is what helps create add-on sales. So I just set up pantry in someone's store last week, and because food here for trends, like food pantry, like tabletop and food items is so big right now here. And, pairing up salt and salt pigs and jams and cute little spoons and tying them on, all of this is storytelling, and it's also creating add-on sales. And that is very much learned from Anthro, and it's still what I instill in my retailers now that I work for and set up for.
Can I ask you a question? How do you build a design? This was always the question my team used to ask, which was, how do we build something beautiful and people be okay to take the product off the display? Like, how do you put enough product of all the things that you're displaying in a beautiful design so that people can take it without the design being ruined? Because you just mentioned that, like at Anthro, like you would have it fully stocked, and then you come back, after the weekend, and the thing was a mess. So how do you do that in an independent store?
It's training and developing your team. I mean, really, it's like when I work in the stores, I a lot of times the owner will say, can you work with so-and-so so you can explain to her why? And there's a definite philosophy of why we do things a certain way. And in explaining that to team members only strengthens their understanding, but it also helps them maintain it. I mean, you're always going to have Anthro, it was sort of unfair for me to say that, because Anthro, I was in the 3rd Street Promenade store in Santa Monica, and it's like that and Rock Center were the 2 highest volume stores in the company at that point. And granted, at that point, there was only probably 14 locations there, but, they will do $100,000 in a day in that store. So it's like, I can't believe you didn't restock that. It's like, really, Michelle, like.
No, but it's true that I say you're not being a bitch, because the thing is, if it's not restocked, they're losing money.
Yeah.
So there is a responsibility to keep the design stock so that you can continue to make sales. And if they have to go and find a sales associate and ask if they've got them, one, some people just won't do that. They'll just walk out. But two, it's wasting your team's time when they could have just stocked it. So I don't think you're being a bitch at all. I think that is actually just proper business management.
It is, but there's always like, I'll talk to some of my stores and she said, where I will loosen up my grip a little bit is like, if your store looks like that and you only did 5,000 and it's like, usually you do between 10 and 15. She's like, yeah, absolutely. What the hell happened? She goes, but you look at it and it's like, they had a really busy day. And it's like, I'd rather have you on the floor selling people. And if we miss out sales on a couple $15 candles or whatever, so be it. Like it's like, and I understand that now. It's like pick and choose your battle. And I think a lot of stores, when there is no customer service, I think for those stores that have such a heavy customer service, it is more important. Like you're there engaging with the customer and, you're there, you're present. And as opposed to like, being so task oriented, like I've got to stock the floor. It's like, so I've learned that now, but it's also taken a lot of time away from what I was like at Anthro.
How do you think, I could talk to you about this. I think we had like a 15-minute chat that went for an hour and 15 minutes last time. So clearly we love to talk, but you've been through so much in terms of change, and I've only been in this industry for 15 years and I just know, 17 years. And I already know what the difference is between when I started to what it is now. But how do you think great brands take that storytelling, that merchandising, that customer journey onto the online forum, like into e-commerce? Who does it well, and why do you think they do it well?
Anthro, Free People does a great job. I mean, I think that's one. It's funny because there is actually a class in a college, I forget what college it is, that actually talks, one of the top topic is the disconnect of e-commerce and what the retail experience is like. And I think that, when you pull stock images off the web or you use a vendor's stock images, you're already giving up some of who your brand is. Like you're not developing it yourself. And I think the more time that you spend developing it as what your store looks like and the ways that you shoot it, how you're styling the apparel, like whatever that is, like how you're staging your Instagram flat lays, all of it. I think if you keep in trend with what you are as a brand and what your store feels like, including the people that shop there, that will relay more into e-commerce. But that's a hard one because it's, so many people don't have time to that's why so many people pull stock images because they don't have time. Yeah. To go out and do a photo shoot with, but I mean, one of the brilliant things, which like one of my accounts who's there in Philadelphia, and it's a very, very junior store. And she's very smart. She's my age and she's very smart. She has all the girls. Part of their job is to post TikTok videos. And that is part of their job and the expectation. And it has kept her brand looking fresh. It kept them social media wise in the front. I mean, it's a very smart thing because I mean, like I said, she's my age and it's like, it's not like she's going to go out showing mini like crop tops but all these young girls that work for her that are so cute and have these rockin' bodies that like, and every day they're on her feed and they use them, they embed it in their website as well. So it feels like Lunachick.
Can I just say that I've talked about this. I don't know if you know the brand Princess Polly.
Mm-mm.
So big FMCG brand, Gen Z, totally. If you ever want to see someone who does a rewards program, well, they are my go-to for the best rewards program ever. But all Gen Z, or Gen Z, as you guys call it, and they are so good at bringing that into those people and the rewards program into that genre, I guess, that age group. But the reason I mentioned the rewards program is you're saying this lady's smart, right? She's like, I'll get the kids in air quotes to do the the TikToks, but actually in that demographic, that is something that they aspire to. Like the self, like the dopamine hit you get from like, I am on my company's, TikTok videos.
Mm-hmm.
Like you and I, we're just like, whatevs, but they're just like, they suck that stuff in, and it is so motivating for them.
That's this generation now. I mean, anybody who's not utilizing their social media and they're not on TikTok and they're not on Reels, it's like, yeah, they suck it up, but hopefully people our age start to embrace it more with retail, because that is literally what is driving people's businesses right now.
Well, the reason I mentioned the Princess Polly Rewards program is because when you get to specific tiers, you have a chance, not a guarantee, but you have a chance to be featured on their Instagram.
Oh, and that's amazing.
This is clearly something that they have, and I've actually interviewed Princess Polly, and they've talked about how they've done so much behavioral demographics and profiling and talk to their customers. And that is not, you don't get that at the bottom level. I think there are 5 levels, and you only get that at level 3. So you have to have spent a decent amount of money before you even go into the chance to be featured on their Instagram. And that is why I believe, understanding those intrinsic values of your ultimate customers, because what you think is a reward doesn't mean that that's what they think. Like, I would never think, oh, hey, you get a chance to be featured on my Instagram. I'm like, but they know that that is something that their customers aspire to. And so your client is like so on the money, because she's like, 1, I don't have to do the work. 2, they get something out of it. And 3, it brings me in customers, and I've done nothing. It's awesome.
Yeah. And it keeps the brand looking and feeling like the brand, both online and in store. I mean, I thought that was really smart. She's the only store that I know that is doing that. I mean, as far as my stores, which this is because it's also the youngest store I have, like the most junior, but I thought it was so brilliant.
I've got one client who does that as well. Not on TikTok, because their people generally hang out they do it on Instagram Reels. All of her team do an Instagram Reel. And what they have actually found is customers start to find they get affiliated with a specific person. So it's like, oh, I'm following, it's a Sarah one. I'm going to follow Sarah because she wears the kind of stuff that I wear, or, she looks like me, or I just like her vibe. And so having those different people actually attracts more customers because they can feel that affiliation with the different sales associates, and it just takes so much pressure off the business owner. Yeah.
I think also that gives you a chance to show that you're a little bit more diversified. It also shows that, like, we love our employees, and then when they go to the store, I'm sure the employees are somewhat like celebrity like, oh, I follow you. And it's like, that just like is one more dopamine hit.
Yeah. And they all need these constant dopamine hits, those Gen Zs. Okay. So you think they're doing it well. Do you think that is a missed I think you even said this, maybe a missed opportunity that so many independent brands could actually jump onto, that connection between in-store and online? Like, the difficulties are, yes, it's going to cost money, and yes, it's going to take time. And you've given us some great strategies to look at how we could maybe minimize the time thing. But do you think that if indie brands actually sat down and spent the time looking at how do we get these more cohesive experiences, it would give them an edge over big business?
I think so, but usually what happens is 2 different people. It's like a tech person who usually is not like the creative person. And then it's the visual people who are the creative people. And I think when it's 2 different people doing 2 different jobs, and trying to make a tech person creative, and it's like, I know for the people, like, tech people are like, my dad was an engineer, just not creative. Like, I can do anything on a computer, but if it's like, tell me how to like do display, like, forget it. So I think for those who do have 2 separate people is like, some companies do, Anthro does weekly meetings, like everybody on all sides sits on it. Because that's the other thing too, is I think a lot of times there's not communication. Like, communication within companies, I've found, is extremely bad. Like, certain departments talk to certain departments, and then other departments have nothing to do with it. And there are big changes that are happening that, all of a sudden they're finding out, but they don't really have anything to do with it. So they haven't been cued into it. But I think that Anthro, the beautiful part is that they are weekly meetings and they are company-wide emails that, you get. It's like the big box of visual communication. It's like you are like literally eat, sleeping, drinking what is happening within the brand as a company. And I think that if people do spend more time, both the tech part of it and the creative part of it, and how do we create that? But I mean, again, like, and most visual people aren't the most techie people either. So, but I think if both parties are talking about how to do this, that there's got to be some kind of solution that both of them work on. But if there's not that cohesiveness between the brand, it's two different parties talking.
Yeah. I just remember that you always have those moments that you remember. And I remember being in my store one day and someone coming to the door and standing at the door and looking from side to side. And I was like, oh, hi, come on in. And she's like, I'm not sure if I'm in the right place. I'm looking for this store. And I'm like, yeah, come in. She's like, oh, this is not what I expected from the website. And that was like, knife to my heart. But I think that was my first, like I had a business degree, but I opened a retail business because I saw a need and that you couldn't buy these products in the country. So I'm like, well, hey, I'll bring the products in. I didn't know anything about branding and design. And that was one of those moments when I was like, oh, like if a customer thinks that, like I've done something, like there's something I need to fix, like something doesn't work. And that, I think that was my moment where I started delving into the rabbit hole of how do you build that connection? Because we're talking like when e-commerce first started out, like 2007, 2008. And so my website was built like on OzCommerce and it was really ugly. And it had nothing to do with it. It looked nothing like the store. It never had occurred to me that people would expect the same thing because e-commerce was so new back then. But that was like that moment where I jumped in going, I have to learn how do I build that connection and that cohesiveness. So when people turn up, they do think I'm in the right place. And you get that. Anthropology is the best example because you go to the website and all of the styling is done as if you were in a store. And you go to the store and you're like, yeah, this is the place. Like I can smell the place from a mile away. Like I can
even the fonts and even the artwork and all of that all feels like anthropology because everybody's on the same page as far as what the visual is supposed to be.
Do you have any strategies, any insight for people who are thinking, how do I, like you're so good at this and this is what you do for a job. How do you tell your retailers to build that information packet, to do that communication, to build that brand? Like what are some tips people can think, oh, maybe I hadn't thought about that before. And if I did that, it would make a big difference.
I think it starts for gifts and apparel are very different, but also in the same sense, kind of not. I from Anthro, one of the things they do beautifully is they concept. So the apparel has concepts. Garden Party was one. It was all the floral dresses. And then in that is built in floral candles and whatnot. And the home departments all have their concepts. And for me and my retailers, it starts at the buying process where I'm kind of curating collections and I tend to give things names. It just comes from Anthro. It's like, okay, this is going to be the pantry section and who lives here? What does she look like? What does she eat? What does she drink? And then I will go back and I'll build a storyboard of, what we bought and kind of same thing Anthro did in a much less detailed fashion, but what the vibe looks like, I'll go through because fashion and gift, while they are very different, fashion comes out with what it looks like and the prints and the lifestyle, and it rolls out slowly to gift. So I'll pull images from apparel magazines that are like, say Garden Party, and it's someone running through a field of greens in a floral dress. That'll be the who is she, and then build in layering and what we bought to go back with it. These pants, these t-shirts, this blah, 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 this dress, these groups of dresses, these accessories, and then these home pieces that we're going to show with it as well. Floral candles. We wrote these floral bowls, whatever. And then we'll do a store meeting. And this is like, we only do this 4 times a year because you can't do it all the time, because the concepts will kind of stay the same, but they will change out little by little, and they change out again in the next quarter. But have a meeting. This is who she is. Here's some of that. We'll have samples of what the styles are like, so everyone can see it, touch it, feel it, smell the candles. And then we'll set up a workshop. And we'll decide we're going to work like either close the store for a day or do an overnight or whatever it is, and scrape the entire section that we're setting up. And then you start building it in, and then it becomes storytelling. Like, let's do a garden trellis here, and then we'll do potted plants, and then we'll show a shirt on a stand-up mannequin on the table, and then we'll fold down whatever. And in between that, we'll have the floral candles. And really, if you started at the buying process and you kind of curate it, if you think about it that way, whether you're doing a big stripe collection, or stripes is what it's all about for next season, and you kind of build in from that, the more you storytell and the more you give your employees and team, like, this is what it looks like for the season. It also, what happens is it makes it a lot easier when merchandise starts to arrive. Your team already knows where it's going, especially once it's all set up and they're like, oh, this is floral, it must be for this. Because I remember at Anthro, we'd have concepts and it was like, you always knew when they bought something and it was like, this doesn't go in any of the concepts, so we're going to arbitrarily put it in this concept. And you get it and it was like, what is this? This doesn't go at all with this. And it's like, all right, and you're kind of burying it because it doesn't go at all, but they've told you this is part of Odile summer collection. It's like, oh, it's like you bury it. But I think the more that your team, the more they communicate what the visual standard is and what the visual is going to look like for this season, and the more you show them examples and get them excited, then when it starts rolling in the store, even after it's set up, it starts rolling in the store, they know where it goes. They're excited. It's storytelling.
I think you have said something that I don't even think I had thought of. I mean, we have a guide that is like how to go into, I think we talked about, you call it open to buy, but we call it going to a trade fair or going to market. And it's how to work out how much to spend and the kind, the types, the categories of products. But you've just kind of, I need to go back and adjust that now that you've said this, which is putting in that concept. Like, what is this going to go with? Like, what concept is this going to fall into? Because that one little nugget that you've just given us, I think would completely change people's buying strategies. They've never thought about that before. They're just like, okay, I need, 20% needs to be outerwear, or I need 10% in this gift range and 30% in this gift range, if they'd even thought of it at all. But now that you're saying that, as they're going through, even if they don't know right from the beginning, but they find that signature piece when they're looking to buy, then they start going, oh, what's going to go with that? Rather than, oh, that's nice, I'll get that. That's nice, I'll get that. And then when I know this was definitely me, it comes in and you're like,
where does it all go?
Where does it all go?
Yeah, that's part of the reason why I started thinking, and I still do my buying like that. I mean, we just finished Magic Fashion Events was in February here. And I'll admit, like, I go by the rule of walk the show the first day, just so you can see, because fashion was all over the place this year for contemporary and for juniors and whatnot. It was like matching sets, pink's still huge. Like, everything that was crocheted the last season is totally gone. I mean, it was so all over the board. So I literally, like, who I was with, I said, we're going to walk the show and see what reveals itself. And after a while, obviously, because everyone's repeating kind of the same thing, you can kind of decide, all right, like the 2-piece matching sets, I was like, no. And by the end of the show, I'm like, I'm on board.
I would have been with you. Sets. I would have been like, oh, kill me now.
Oh my God. And it was like everything from like that Vans checkerboard print and shorts and shirt matching. And I was like, 18 rows into Magic, I was like, I'm down with this. Let's do it. And it was, like, but, and again, like, that's where we started concepting. So it was like, we did the whole checkerboard thing, and there was a lot in gift that we could play back with checkerboard. She's going to bring in Vans, the checkerboard, and it became this amazing curated little, like almost like a pop-up shop.
That is, thank you, because if people get nothing out of this other than your amazing story, that I think is life-changing. That is business-changing advice, because I mean, I'll admit, I've never thought of it like that. Like, it might sometimes happen, like it might fall into that. You're like, oh, this would go with that. But I know that I've been in that situation way too often when, 60 days on from trade fair, all the stuff starts arriving and you're like,
oh my God,
what did I buy? Why did I buy that?
Oh my God. I mean, I've been, because there's a lot of buyers just go and buy. Also, the other trip fall is like, I just, you can tell they buy what they like.
Oh yes. Let's talk more about that.
It's like, okay, you liked it all and now it's all here and none of it goes together. And in those cases, I've had to go with the rule, when in doubt, color it out. It's like, all right.
Color block.
It's all, this is our green section and this is our blue section. I mean, honestly, it's like sometimes, but it's like the buying, not even for your some's for your customer, but a lot of it is really like, I want a piece of this. I'm going to take the large in the pack set. Like, it's like, hey, and then it sits. I mean, I've had a client, it's a spa and like a high-end spa, and they kept buying yoga wear, and it's like, yoga wear is not selling. And it's like, okay, let's move out of this, put it on sale, get your money back and put it in something else. And it's like the holidays came and went. I came back in January.
Well, yoga
and damned if they didn't buy a whole new yoga group. I'm like, why are we going? Well, we thought it was so cute and we wanted to try it again. I'm like, try it again. Like, you're sitting on a year's worth of inventory that even at 50% off, you haven't sold, and yet you decide to buy more. I'm like, okay.
Hey, business 101, making money.
Oh my God.
Can we maybe talk a little bit about your strategies for not even thinking about, okay, I'm going to buy that thing because I want to take one out of it, but I'm going to buy that because I like it. How do you get your clients and the people listening now to change their mindset to, yes, some of the reason that people come to your business is because of your curation, but at some point you have to let that go and go with the trends. So how do you convince your customers, like you said, the matching set thing, you were like, no, then, oh my God, yes, we're going to have to do this. How do you make sure that they listen to what is happening in the market rather than just what they think?
Well, it's part listening to what's in the market, but really it's knowing who your customer is, honestly. Like, my colossal mistake with the store that I still do magic with is, and again, like, you go to shows and it's like the same trend is repeated over and over. And I don't know if it hit as much in Australia as it did here in the US, but leopard and animal prints were like huge, like to the point where every single, from high end to low end, every single person. And it was almost like, well, I don't have a lot of choice. So I went in, I'm like, okay, I'm all in on the animal thing. Well, guess what? The customers in that area are not fans of animal. And it's like the shitty little side comments I kept hearing, like, yep, the animal stuff's not selling still. It's like, thank you, knife to the heart. It's like, and it's funny now because now I'm training her. She's doing the buying and I kind of stand back to the side, and she's much more conservative and she's much more afraid. And she said, she bought, I forget what she bought last season. She goes, not a lot of it, sold them all. Oh, it was the animal print. Animal print debacle from me. And
it's like the bedazzled t-shirts.
Every buyer is going to have it. And if you don't take risks, you're never going to know. But knowing, the more I know and the more I stuck to who our customer is, and you're going to die when I tell you this, it's a 5-store pharmacy. And here in the US, pharmacies, the amount of money that they're getting for drugs and whatnot is not the same. So they have all this real estate. So a lot of people are doing gift. And guess what? Apparel is the number one department in all of my pharmacies because it's a captive audience. But I fell away from the original lesson that I knew was a $40 price point. something that didn't need a fitting room to try on, and an instant gratification thing where if she bought it and she took it home, she's like, oh, whatever, it's like $30. I'll just give it to my friend. It became, it wasn't a
It wasn't a make or break thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was my fault because I did not listen to what I knew is who is our customer? What is our price point? Where's she going to wear it? Is she going to wear it? And it's like, I didn't, it was my mistake. But I think that if you know who your customer is, things may be trending and you can touch on it. Like the pink thing here in the US was huge last season. I mean, like so much pink, it was gross. Like it was like, and that's not the pharmacy's customer. But I said to Erin, you should try a couple pieces just to give a pop to the other stuff. So it looks like you're still there. You're still showing on trend, but you're showing it with other things that you are going to sell. And if you don't sell those 3 or 4 SKUs and they go on sale, so be it. But as a visual, as a department, those few pieces show that you are still within the trend. It's helping sell other pieces that and you're testing the waters.
Yeah. And you never know. Sometimes it works, right?
Yeah.
I'm guessing for that pharmacy, you're talking about all those things, but the customer demographic is generally going to skew a little bit older. Would that be correct?
No, it's like, it's like everything. There are the older customers, but they're buying the grandkids Jellycat plush and all the games.
Is Jellycat even a thing there too? It's huge here.
Oh my God, they're huge. I do their displays for the US. So, but they, it's it became where we're known for apparel now. So now, they may not be dropping off scripts. They're there to actually shop the apparel and the gift departments because I expanded their gifts. I really expanded. So we have a baby department, we have a kids department, we have a women's apparel, then we have tabletop where we do amazing dishes and dish towels. We have a crystal section, and then we have an inspiration section, which is where like the crosses and God bless you and all, like, if you're going to a pharmacy, a lot of you are sick. So you still need to have that. But by far and large, it's crazy. Like the apparel, it's like people coming in just to shop apparel.
That is so smart. And that is one of the things that I've been talking to. So here in Australia, do you even have news agents in America? So where you buy your paper? Like a newspaper.
There's some newsstands still. Barnes and Noble, the bookstore here, still has a pretty large, but sadly, I think magazines are kind of like on the down.
Yeah. So here we would have what we call a news agent, and it would have your newspaper, your magazines, your gift cards, and they would sell bus tickets and lottery tickets. And of course, like you said, with the pharmacies, the amount of money they bring in from those things is like cents on the dollar for each thing that they sell. And they have had to, like the good ones that are still in business, have had to turn into really beautiful gift stores. But the ones that don't are the ones that are saying, that people aren't buying newspapers. And it's like, well, no, they're not. But you've got a business here and you have this opportunity because they're generally in very small shopping centers. There's maybe 15, 20 stores in there, a supermarket. And so people are going there every single day to get their daily replenishments. And if they need to get a gift, it's just easy, like the convenience. And so having to curate a range of beautiful things is what keeps them in business, and not just tat. Like so many of them go to the markets and the buying fairs and they just buy cheap stuff, but they haven't actually thought about the fact that their clients are not going there for cheap stuff. They're going there for a beautiful $40 candle for my friend's birthday. And so, like you said, knowing your customer is so important, but also it's that adapting. And I really like what you said about the pharmacy taking in those pops of color and maybe even taking in those different kind of items just to test it out. Like you have to be testing this stuff out because you never know what your 100%. Customers want.
Well, also, if the pandemic taught us anything, is those who are unwilling to pivot and change and try new things are quickly being ushered out. Like think about how many people, no one was on stories. No one was going live before the pandemic. And, the stores, like the older generation of stores where I'm like, I'm not going to get on camera. They don't even have a website that's like up and running. Like they have a website, but there's nothing on it because they don't have anyone to put, but they weren't willing to go on stories. They didn't do, they didn't even do Facebook, like nothing. Like, and now the pandemic, what has changed is like going live is almost a standard now with a lot of apparel lines. And I think that's what's so cool to see now, this newer generation of retailers and like how out of the box they think. And like I said to somebody on an interview, like one of the things at the Magic Show, which blew my mind, and it was so cool to see, was these girls are going live from the show floor, light ring in tow. Like, I'm sorry, I would not carry my light ring around, but man, they're light ring and they're going live and they're in a booth and they've got their whoever trying on, like, isn't this cute? It's, they already have the retail price figured out, blah, blah, blah. And they're taking orders live and they're turning around going, we'll take 10 packs. I mean, I was like, that is brilliant because
that's smart.
A whole other level than what my generation of retailers is doing. And there are stores that are older generation that are like starting to do it. And like, they're like pushing the envelope. They're like, I'll do it. But the stores, I think, that are unwilling to change and are in that old school mentality of like, we've always done it like this, are slowly the ones like the pandemic, like quickly are ushering things out, and all these new kids with these new ideas and doing things differently, because why not? Why not just try doing it?
And I think, I don't know, you probably see this as well, but the difference between what is, and I love this, I will just put my hand up and say, I love this. The difference between what is acceptable today and what was acceptable even 5 years ago in terms of, like, we are so much more inclusive and diverse. And I love that for all the freaks and the geeks, because that's most of my family.
100%.
I love that people are allowed to be themselves now. And you can be a little bit ostentatious, or you can be a little bit introverted. You can wear a mask if you don't want to go. Like, all of that is okay. And that is actually what attracts people to want to hang out with you.
Yeah. Sadly, here in America, there's a lot of that's not okay, but it's like, for me, like the all-inclusive and wear a rainbow wig if you want. Do it. You do you. Like,
yeah.
It makes you happy, and that's okay.
All right. I feel like I have to finish up this conversation pretty much now, because we've been talking for about an hour, and I'm pretty sure that we could continue to talk for another hour, but we'll do that on your podcast.
Yes.
If people want some help with this kind of stuff, because let's be honest, they're not going to get it from me, where can they reach out to you and have a chat? Because I know that you do consulting. I know you actually have people, you will go and help people inside of their stores in the US. And maybe they just want to listen to your podcast as well, because you got a lot to say and that's really good stuff.
Well, the Retail Whore podcast is on all platforms. You can also go to retailwhorepodcast.com and pull up any of them. And the great thing about that is that I have so many retailers that are also talking about what works for them, what doesn't. We have people talking about merchandising and design, and we have SEO people, and we have all these different conversations going on, because retail is very lonely. I think everyone's in their stores all day and you don't get a chance to get out. And it's like, to be able to listen to some and get new ideas. Like, I just did one yesterday that released that was all about merchandising. And I've had so many DMs of like, thank you so much for redoing our store today. Like, all the suggestions you were making about risers. You had mentioned, I hate plastic risers. Like, I won't let any of my stores use them. So I tell people, like, forget like the plastic riser, like use this, this, and this. So the Retail Whore, you'll hear about that.
Use a tissue box, use something.
Pavers, like tree slices. There's so many great, and again, storytelling. And then MC Design Collaboration, the Instagram, and my website's not as great. My Instagram, I'm on it all the time. I'm on stories. I'm talking to people through as I'm doing displays. I try and give as much information as I can just on jobs I'm doing, as well as like things I'm seeing or, whatnot. And that's MC Design Collaboration. And if you do want to go to the website, mcdesigncollaboration.com. And I think that's it.
That's everything. Just follow her on Instagram and listen to the podcast, and you'll get loads of information. All right. Lots and lots. Thank you, Michelle. This has been like one of my favorite podcasts, because it is just like sitting down, having a glass of wine and having great conversation, which is one of my most favorite things in the world to do. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to interview you now and turn the tables on you.
All righty. We will chat again soon.
Yes.
So that's a wrap. I'd love to hear what insight you've gotten from this episode and how you're going to put it into action. If you're a social kind of person, follow me at @TheSelena and make sure to leave a comment and let me know. And if this episode made you think a little bit differently, or gave you some inspiration, or perhaps gave you the kick that you needed to take action, then please take a couple of minutes to leave me a review on your platform of choice. Because the more reviews the show gets, the more independent retail and e-commerce stores just like yours that we can help to scale. And when that happens, it's a win for you, a win for your community, and a win for your customers. I'll see you on the next episode.